cannot make up the magnitude of what's happening right now. The globalists are moving on every front, not just here, but worldwide. They are tipping their hand, showing their true intentions, because they're entering a major phase of endgame global governance takeover. The Republican leadership, quote, caved in and now supports Obama's power grab over the internet, calling it net neutrality, which is synonymous with an open, free internet. But when you actually get details of the secret 322-page bill, the former head of the FCC has called very dangerous. The commissioner says, quote, independence of the agency has been compromised. Hillary Clinton has come out endorsing it and was flogging and lobbying yesterday up and down Silicon Valley in California. Suddenly the Republican leadership are backing it, and you've only got a few left-wing groups and libertarian groups fighting it. Here's the headline: left groups now fear government net grab going too far. Electronic Freedom Foundation. I mean, it is on, ladies and gentlemen. Look at these headlines. FCC chair refuses to testify before Congress ahead of net neutrality vote. New York Times, FCC net neutrality rules clear hurdle as Republicans concede to Obama. There are no regulations over free speech right now. There are already criminal laws in place. So it is an open-ended system right now, and a power grab if this goes into place. Just like Obamacare just lets the government do whatever it wants. That's the language they admit is in there. And it's large sectors of the establishment are freaking out right now, because it's one thing to say they want to have Chinese-style net censorship. It's another thing when they start doing it. And I just got chills. 11th hour drama for net neutrality. A Democrat on the Federal Communications Commission wants to see changes that can narrow the scope of new net neutrality rules set for vote on Thursday. And it goes through the three key Democrats on the committee that do not want this to happen. But again, they're trying to call the commissioner, the chairman. There's the chair and then there's the commissioner, two separate positions. We have the former chair and the former commissioner of the FCC saying this is bad news. And then now we've got the current FCC chair refusing to appear. That's the headline at drudgereport.com. Refusing to appear before Congress ahead of internet takeover. And notice on every front now, whether it's open borders or executive orders on energy or gun control or foreign wars, they don't care. They're just doing it. Forced inoculation, they're just doing it. Everything is moving into an accelerated high gear right now. Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central, we're here live, broadcasting worldwide. Back weeknights, 7 o'clock Central, InfoWars Nightly News. Find showtimes and listings at InfoWarsNews.com or Infowars.com/show, as well as PrisonPlanet.tv. Epic time to be alive. I've been so close to this globalist takeover, watching it from afar, and then as it approached, that I've almost become comfortable with this devilish system. I don't like it. I detest it. But I've almost made a sick friend of it, in that I know it so well. And so I have a blind side. I mean, sure, I'm up here waving my arms around, warning people, going over all the documentation 3-4 hours a day myself. But I don't want all the other epic things happening to get in the way of people focusing in on the big enchilada. And that is that the power structure globally is accelerating a tyrannical takeover of every facet of daily life, the family, the economy, health and wellness. They are moving in a giant offensive where they're engaging in more tyranny in 1 year now than what happened in 10 years previously. We've now reached that critical juncture jump point where they are abolishing states' rights. They are federalizing police all over the world. They are putting carbon taxes in by fiat, even if governments don't pass them, and arresting people that build barns on their property or have a puddle in their backyard. $10,000, $15,000 a day fines, they vary. Drones are surveilling now suddenly just neighborhoods and farms and ranches. World governments openly being announced, and they're on TV going, yeah, there are secret treaties being passed right now that Congress can't see that put our government under foreign UN control. I mean, it's happening. Obama, for now a year, has just completely opened the border. They give the illegals all the freebies, sign them up for welfare, bring them in, boom. No other country would do that in the world. This is North American Union global governance unfolding. After they've already imploded Latin America, and they're going to force that crisis to pour over our borders after our government and others already destabilized Mexico. This is a worldwide destabilization program. And now, in the last 6 years, they have put the internet kill switch grid in place and then admitted it. And they have systems to take over your cell phones, take over your smartphones, take over your home appliances, and force government messages over them. And now it's beginning. They're actually doing it. They are moving ahead to turn loose major military forces of NATO against the Russians in a proxy war on the Russian doorstep in eastern Ukraine. Right before I went live, I was watching Senate presentations. It wasn't debate. It wasn't filibustering. It wasn't 2-minute speeches. It was Lindsey Graham, John McCain, and other Republican senators up there with maps of Ukraine. And I sat there with a cup of coffee in my hand for 5 minutes with my mouth open as Lindsey Graham goes, we stood up against Hitler, who thought he had a master race, wanted to dominate and enslave the world. And now the forces of Hitler, in fact, I have Jacobson back there grabbing the clip. I'm going to play it later. The forces of Hitler that are represented by Russia are invading, and we've got to go in there militarily and fight them. And then they cut to John McCain saying it. If anyone knows history, it was the Nazis that went into Western Ukraine and that had a war with the Russians, and then it's Eastern Ukraine that fought the Nazis. And I'm not taking sides, Eastern, Western Ukrainians. Slavic Russians in the East, what Hitler'd call Aryan, in the West, but they're all related. Killing each other. Both sides have beefs, but our government was literally inverting reality, saying that the Russians are Nazis and represent the Nazis historically, when 20 million Russians died fighting the Nazis. 20 million. That's why when I say America really wasn't in World War II, both my grandfathers were in World War II. Both of them almost died. We lost 400,000 people. We were in World War II. That was big. Civil War killed 700,000. World War II is our third biggest war. World War I even killed more. But compared to 20 million Russians, 21 to 22 million Germans, I mean, the Germans and the Russians were toe-to-toe for 3.5 years, slaughtering each other in major cities, just toe-to-toe in Stalingrad and other areas where millions were killed in one city. I mean, you talk about war, there's never been anything like it. Nothing ever like it. Can you imagine the Russians when they see that on their television? Our senators saying they're the Nazis and using examples of Hitler and maps of Hitler. I mean, this is inverted reality. Upside down, 1984, writ large. It's just mind-blowing. Just like Obamacare was written by giant insurance companies on record to double and triple your prices, create death panels, screw you over, raise 7 taxes on poor people, 20-plus taxes total. Global profits up almost 50%, 47, 49, depending on what number you look at, tripling the profits just domestically for insurance companies. But worldwide, they're screwing us so bad right now that insurance companies worldwide have had a 47 to 49% increase in 2013, 2014. That's reality inverted. That's fascist healthcare with a fake liberal stumbling around. All of this is fascism. The end of our sovereignty, the open borders, the shutting off our power plants while China opens 3 new ones a week. And then They have the internet kill switch in place. They're trying to pass cybersecurity legislation that SOPA and cispa wrapped in together. They've got language in here that basically says anything offensive, anything threatening can be taken down by the FCC. This is the FCC is going to now be giving orders to major internet providers to just take websites down. We've had a whole bunch. Endgame was taken down, and I had to threaten to sue people, and they put it back up last week. They're trying to take the Alex Jones channel down right now for us talking and showing a BBC News article. So right now, we can barely reach you. We can barely stay on air right now. This isn't the FCC saying you can't say the S word or the F word on broadcast. This is the FCC saying we're going to protect the internet by making it a government utility and putting regulations over it. And they now have gotten part of the 322 pages that is secret that basically says it's censorship. And the Republican leadership's come out and said, let's pass the bill. We're joining with Obama. And it's libertarian groups, paleo-conservatives, and the left that are freaking out. Left group now fear government net grab going too far. We got to get Wayne Madsen on today. Let's call Wayne Madsen. Or let's call, we didn't have any guests today. I didn't want any guests today, but I think a Wayne Madsen popping in on this or one of our other web experts would be good. Dear FCC, rethink the vague general conduct rule. You see that? You got to watch your general conduct. For many months, EFF has been working with a broad coalition of advocates to persuade the Federal Communications Commission to adopt new open internet rules that would survive legal scrutiny and actually help protect the open internet. Our message has been clear from the beginning. The FCC has a role to play, but its role must be firmly bound. See, what did I tell you 6 months ago when I got attacked by all the big liberal publications when I said this is not net neutrality, this is a Trojan horse power grab, it's going to be written totally vague. Because Hillary and Obama were endorsing it, folks. They don't endorse anything unless it's evil. 2 weeks ago, we learned that we had likely managed the first goal. The FCC is going to do the right thing and reclassify broadband as telecommunications service, giving it the ability to make new, meaningful, open internet rules. But we are deeply concerned the FCC's new rules will include a provision that sounds like a recipe for overreach and confusion, the so-called general conduct rule. But again, they will not even testify to Congress and say what's in the pages. According to the FCC's own fact sheet, the proposed rule will allow FCC to review and presumably punish non-neutral practices that may harm consumers or edge providers. They've already said what that means. If your little website doesn't provide audio translation or language translation, they'll shut you down. But then you got to pay for that, so it makes it cost prohibitive to put out your free speech. You can't limit the First Amendment just because somebody speaks Spanish or Mandarin Chinese or English. That's like saying, if I go give a speech on a street corner, I'm violating someone's right under political correctness if I don't have a voice box changer like in Star Trek that translates it to everybody. But that's what they're saying. That's just one example. According to the FCC's own fact sheet, proposal rule will allow FCC to review, did you hear that? And presumably punish non-neutral practices that may harm consumers or edge providers. Late last week, as the window for public comment was closing, EFF filed a letter with the FCC urging it to clarify and sharply limit the scope of any general conduct provision. Folks, whether it's the free health care of Obamacare that doubles and triples prices and is a giant screw job, or whether it's, free healthy energy, that means cutting off our energy, or whether it means protecting the internet, it means taking it over. It's an open-ended giant power grab, a blank check, period. We already had net neutrality. They're called, like Jesse Ventura said yesterday, antitrust laws. And Congress could tell the big telecoms, you're making money hand over fist. You charge for the bandwidth to provider to provider. You're not going to put toll roads up on this. The whole infrastructure is paid for. It's the only part of our economy that keeps growing. Keep your stinking hands off of it, or we're going to have antitrust hearings right now. And no one would do it. They've had peer-to-peer wars many times in my 20 years on air. And every time within days, whoever tries it stops it because it just screws the whole internet up and lawsuits get fired up. So leave it alone. Leave it alone. That's what net neutrality means. Antitrust, ladies and gentlemen, free market, not the FCC waddling in. And you've got the former chairman, the former commissioner, and a bunch of Democrats and Republicans saying this is bad news. But Obama and the leadership
It's no...
Now, the FCC commissioner, Ajit, if I pronounced that right, says net neutrality is a solution that won't work to a problem that doesn't exist. Exactly. This is government coming in to basically end net neutrality and start ending free speech in a giant power grab. Just like we told you the Patriot Act would be used against non-terror-related cases, now it's basically used exclusively to get rid of the Bill of Rights and Constitution because we could read how it was written. Well, now they just keep it secret. Another big telltale, but pieces of it are coming out. Then you've got Tom Wheeler, a Democrat, the current chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. We have a clip of him on PBS we're going to play here in just a moment. He refuses to testify to Congress. He's under Congress, chartered by Congress, but Congress is so neutered. I mean, they should have him contempt charges right now, and a U.S. attorney should move to have him indicted today. Just like the Attorney General refusing to testify and all the rest of it. These people are belligerent brigands under our system of law. And so now I'm not going to let you see it, and I'm not going to testify. Sit down and shut up. It's the bureaucracy run by special interests and Obama doing whatever they want. And the Republican leadership just went, you know what, we're going to support it. New York Times. Michael Powell has come out, son of Colin Powell, and said this is super bad news. I have that article right here. But first, let's go to the clip of the current head who won't testify to Congress. This is very interesting. Here he is 2 weeks ago.
We're really not doing utility regulation here. Utility regulation was developed for a monopoly model. What we're doing is we're taking the legal construct that once was used for phone companies and paring it back to modernize it so it specifically deals with this issue. So it's not really utility.
The FCC has only had jurisdiction since it was set up in the 20s over broadcast AM, FM, UHF, VHF. This is a giant power grab into all telecommunications and the internet by a bunch of people who've been meeting with the communist Chinese czars who are over censorship and who are now implementing it and saying they want to implement it. Now, let's continue with the giant power grab. Here it is.
Regulation. But it is regulation to make sure that there is somebody watching out for the consumer.
Oh.
Like you said, there's no paid prioritization, there's no blocking, there's no throttling. And most important, there will be ongoing rules in perpetuity.
Oh.
So that there'll be a yardstick to measure what's fair for consumers. Because we don't know what the internet's going to be 5 years from now, and we don't know what the various tricks are going to be 5 years from now, but we're going to have a referee on the field.
Okay,
let's talk
a government what some referee. Of your critics have had to say, starting with the National Cable Telecommunications Association, which put out this statement today. They said, despite the repeated assurances from the president and Chairman Wheeler, we remain concerned that this proposal will confer sweeping discretion to regulate rates and set the economic terms and conditions of business relationships. Just the opposite of what you just promised.
That is the opposite. You're right. And I think that when they actually see the proposal after it's enacted by the Commission, they'll see that there is no rate regulation, they'll see that there is no tariffing, they'll see that there's no unbundling, all the classic utility kinds of activities. And what there is in place a set of safeguards for consumers that at the same time allow those cable companies to make a fair return so they're incented to expand their networks.
This is what it is. There is not government regulation over the internet at this point itself. There are laws over criminal activity. This is a federal government power grab of the internet, as the Wall Street Journal called it, from internet to Obamanet. And it is the Obamanoids, the same big corporations that brought you Obamacare, the screw job of screw jobs, that are now backing all of this. So what's that tell you? And he says, and they will get to see it. The coalition of cable companies, a lot of them small mom and pops. That's why you're seeing some sense out of them. Some of the big ones are supporting it because they know they'll be left alone. They've got the lobbying power. So this is a giant grab of the internet. And you notice he said, after it's enacted, you can see it. Just like with these Pacific partnerships and North American Union agreements, the text of the North American Union Treaty signed by Vicente Fox, Paul Martin, and George Bush in 2005 in Waco, Texas at Baylor University, 100 miles from where I sit, is still secret. Boy, that sounds like a free country to me, doesn't it? But we see the result. Obama's following the secret treaty. Open borders. World government. It's incredible. Simply amazing. And these big Trans-Pacific partnerships, we still can't see the text of that. Congress can't. I mean, this is over-the-top totalitarianism. This is Ajit Pai, the FCC commissioner, on what the FCC chairman and Obama and the Republican leadership against the Republican majority and the Democrats are doing. Again, it's the insiders, the people at the top who want the open borders, the global government, the gun control, the wars. It is the scum, the committee chairman. They are the problem. They are the ones run by the foreign banks, running this country into the ground. Let's go to that clip.
Why is that regulation book so thick?
Well, that's part of the reason why I want this to be released to the American public. I think if you told the average American that the FCC is going to propose regulations for the internet economy that are 332 pages long, and you're not going to be able to see it until the FCC adopts it, they would think that's the wrong way to go. And part of the reason why I've been so outspoken about this plan is that it's very intrusive. Unfortunately, under the FCC's rules, I can't describe with any particularity what's in the document. And so I think that we at the FCC should be as open and transparent as the internet itself and let the American people see for themselves what it is that we're talking about.
Wait a minute, you can't tell me what's in the document?
That is correct. Stamped on the front is an internal, use-only, non-public moniker. And unless I'm authorized by the chairman to disclose this, I can't let you or any of the other millions of Americans who are interested in the internet economy know what the FCC is going to do.
Why? Until
we vote on February 26th, this document will not be released.
Why?
Well, that's been the traditional practice, believe it or not, of the FCC. The chairman circulates a proposal 3 weeks before we vote on it. It's kept secret within the walls of the FCC, and only after we vote on it and staff has a chance to make changes does the public get to see what exactly it is that we voted on.
So technically,
especially on
what can viewers, if viewers are going to call the FCC, what are you going to tell them if they don't know what's in the document? Can I tell them don't pass this if I don't know what's in it?
Exactly.
That's exactly the problem, and that's part of the reason why I have been banging the drum in favor of releasing the document and, barring that, trying to educate the public as best I can within the rules.
Now, folks, the FCC commissioner actually runs the FCC, and he's saying it's horrible. So he's like the police chief. But then you've got the mayor who says it's a great idea, but don't let anybody see it. You've got the head of the board that's political saying, don't let the public see this. And then you got the guy that actually runs the FCC saying, here it is, it's secret with red tape. I know what's in it. It's really bad, but I'm not allowed to tell you. Well, we've had Senator Graham and Congressman Jones and others that have seen the 28 pages of the 9/11 report that's secret. And it just says our government stood down because Saudi Arabia was quarterbacking 9/11. See, inside job. Government knew, government stood down. I'm correct. I'm vindicated. Where are the apologies? Where? Where are they? They're nowhere. And let me tell all the neocons and fake right-wingers and fake liberals all over Fox, CNN, talk radio, you name it. When ISIS or Al-Qaeda does something bigger than 9/11, everybody who's got a brain knows our government built them up again and let them attack. And you're not going to get away with it this time. You understand? Good. Because everybody's going to know you've been accomplices in helping cover all this up. With your red herrings. Alex says there's no such thing as radical Islamicists. Alex doesn't. No, our government's giving them the weapons and protecting them. But again, it's tiny criminal groups at the top. You've even got the FCC commissioner saying it's bad. The former head of the FCC saying it's bad. The former chairman, Powell. Let's play that clip right now. Here's a clip of Powell.
The next phase of this long-tortured net neutrality event will be likely litigation. So we're going to wait to see what the FCC order actually says and does. But we think it's very likely that there'll likely be an appeal.
So one of the things we've all talked about is what an appeal looks like and how long it takes and what that does to investment in during that period. We've heard from the CEO of AT&T who said that he plans to pull back. Can you speak to that broadly from all of your constituents you've been talking to?
Sure. I think to put it briefly, litigation with FCC appeals is a pretty long, drawn-out process. I would predict that it's at least 2 and up to 5 years before the rules are fully and finally settled. The original classification decision went all the way to the Supreme Court and took a good 3.5, 4 years. If you look at the current set of net neutrality rules in 2010, it's 2015, and we still don't have a new set, and this debate has gone on for a decade. It's one of the reasons we believe this issue is ripe for Congress to fix, which would moot all the litigation. And of course, from an investment standpoint, companies have to understand what the settled nature of the law is. They've understood that the law for 15 years, and suddenly that's going to be radically transformed to a new style of regulation,
that's right,
which is going to prompt a whole myriad of questions that are going to await answers, and I think that's going to have an impact on investment choices.
And the special interest, the big telecoms, you can bet your bottom dollar when it comes out, have written this, and it is going to be one-sided to consolidate power, and the FCC, a very totalitarian organization, at least historically, very anti-free speech organization, is going to now have jurisdiction over all telecommunications. That means, well, you notice it's already anything that's a broadcast device, like the smart meter, your clock radio, you know, it's got the FCC sticker on the back. This is just going to turn it loose into everything. And it'll take years for them to really take it over, but they will. They already tried with Obama about 5 years ago saying, oh, all broadband and free Wi-Fi that government's going to give you, it will be censored and it will be under government control. Well, already in London and Germany and other places, you go get on the, quote, free mass transit Wi-Fi that's paid for by taxpayers. It's not free. And it tells you in a message, everything's being monitored, everything's being tracked. So there's no freedom on this government web, but it's free. But we pay for it. Not true. And, oh, by the way, FCC regulation is going to be over it here domestically, just like they have similar systems in Europe. So they provide it, quote, free, so they can then claim jurisdiction over the entire thing. Republican FCC commissioners asked Wheeler to delay net neutrality vote, release proposal. This just came out a few minutes ago. We respectfully request the FCC leadership immediately release the 332 pages. That's the skull and bones number. Isn't that funny? Internet regulation plan publicly and allow the American people a reasonable period of not less than 30 days to carefully study it. Remember, Obama had a promise that he would have 7 days to read the bills. Republican commissioners, Mr. Pai and O'Reilly, said in a statement Monday that after the commission reviews the specific input it receives from the American public and makes any modifications to the plan as appropriate, we could proceed to a final vote. See, that's even a red herring. You don't want the FCC over the internet. It was designed by DARPA and the Pentagon to survive a nuclear attack. It's designed to not be controlled and be organic. It's already basically run between 3 big groups. Google's the top of it, then the NSA. So they already pretty much run it. They just want to make this announcement to everybody. The FCC received more than 4 million comments on its hashtag open internet during past year that helped shape proposal. It's time to act. Does anyone really believe that they're actually listening to that input? They're listening to the input of the globalists. Hillary Clinton endorses FCC's Title II designation yesterday. She's out lobbying for it. I mean, that ought to tell you everything you need to know. The Brian Williams of politics, Hillary Clinton. FCC chair refuses to testify before Congress ahead of net neutrality. Maybe they'll fly him out of the country. FCC net neutrality rules clear hurdle as Republicans concede to Obama. Senior Republicans conceded on Tuesday to the grueling fight with President Obama over the regulation of internet service appears over, with President and an army of internet activists victorious, an army of Democratic Party moron wonks going, we're going to free the internet, we are, yeah. Oh, really? Well, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the EFF, just came out and said this is an absolutely horrible deal. And Republicans on Capitol Hill, who once criticized the plan as Obamacare for the internet, now say they're unlikely to pass a legislative response that would undo perhaps the biggest policy shift since the internet became a reality. Yeah, since Al Gore invented it, and he also, there's a mystery who did the pyramids. There's actually not. It was Al Gore. He has a teleportation device and an army of flying saucers, and he went back at the time and built it. Did Obi-Wan ever told you who your father is? He told me enough. He told me you killed him. No. Al Gore is your father. That's ridiculous. Oh, my goodness. And again, the larger question is, why is it all moving right now in unison? Why are the globalists moving, not just here, but worldwide? That's my big question. Net neutrality, the future of freedom on the internet. It's all to be discussed here. Wayne Madsen joins us for 30 minutes, but I'm going to start taking calls here in just a few minutes. The toll-free number to join us is 800-259-9231. 800-259-9231 is the toll-free number. 800-259-9231. I'm sitting here like the Colossus straddling two different worlds. Old dinosaur AM and FM that is the original proto-independent media, because it was the only independent media in this country for decades. True grassroots electronic soapbox where you could be heard. Wasn't perfect, but it was the real McCoy. That's why it merges so well with the internet and freedom. Old dinosaur-controlled corporate press is dying. As we move into this basically government and corporate propaganda, they're going to want to shut down free independent voices like Infowars, Drudge, WorldNet Daily, and you. The answer is more of us have websites, more of us be involved on globalist platforms, that we just take over the system, they'll never be able to stop us. That's why it's important for all of you to be online activists. Promoting whether it's sovereignty, family rights, medical rights to not be forcibly inoculated. You pick your issue or a raft of issues, get involved. And support independent, hardcore, pro-liberty-based media that transcends left and right. Notice it's a coalition of leftist, internet experts, paleo-conservatives, and libertarians fighting this, and it's the Republican pigs and the Democratic hogs, the establishment scum with a bunch of foreign corporations that want to carve up the web and shut down their competition because they cannot compete. We've had 10 senators, or 5 or 6 Congress members, I think 3 or 4 more senators, 10 members of Congress, we wrote an article last year about it, so I know it's 10, come out and call for the return of the, quote, fairness doctrine, Orwellian name to censor free speech on talk radio, and for a fairness doctrine online. So that's what they're doing here. That's what this is, guaranteed. Now, we had Obamacare, and it had the bioethics death panels. And people still couldn't believe that was in there when we had the actual text of it. And they just ridiculed us. The army of liberals that wanted it. Now there's an army of liberals that want this. You mean an army of trendy shills that think they're liberal and aren't? We've got Wayne Madsen for about 40 minutes or so. Then I'm going to get into this secret police substation. In fact, we'll keep him longer and get his take on that and take your phone calls. But I will go to Mary and Cindy and Spencer and Kevin and others that are patiently holding. But before we go any further, I want to just recap the news here. They are trying tomorrow to pass a secret 322-page FCC regulation. That is, the FCC is going to issue it. And they say it's going to pass their board. We've got multiple commissioners that actually do the work. The chairman is like the mayor, saying it's a horrible idea. They're fixing a problem that doesn't exist. Net neutrality is a solution that won't work to a problem that doesn't exist. That's what one chairman said, Chairman Pai. You've got the Republican leadership, of course we now learn, has been involved the whole time and supports it. That's in the New York Times. You've got the normal coalition of kind of rent-a-mob, fake liberal trendies that are supporting it. You've got Hillary out promoting it. This is the FCC that has no regulatory power over the internet getting that power. And that's what Hillary said, quote, to Silicon Valley yesterday, quote, it gets a foot in the door. Or a camel's nose under the tent flap. And she supports it. Now, that's got to tell you something. So just like with Obamacare, the Republican and Democratic leadership are for it. The grassroots is against it until they're brainwashed. And it's the same story over and over and over again. Now, I don't know Wayne Madsen's view on this overall. I just know that he covers telecommunications, the NSA, the CIA, net neutrality, and is involved with the Electronic Frontier Foundation and the Freedom of the Internet groups, has been involved in it since these groups were started. He's testified to Congress, the EU, you name it. Members of Congress have also had him as expert witness. So he is uniquely positioned as probably the biggest NSA whistleblower most people never heard about. You hear about Snowden all day, but Madsen was blowing the whistle back when they didn't arrest you for exposing criminal activity 20 years ago when he left the National Security Agency. Before that, he was in electronic anti-submarine warfare operations in highly classified areas of the Navy. And, of course, he's a frequent guest here on the broadcast, and I appreciate him coming on short notice. I just thought, hey, we ought to get Wayne Madsen's take on this. All I knew months ago was they wouldn't show what the proposal was, and I said, I don't want the FCC over the Internet use antitrust laws on these big corporations that are already there, that they can't stop people's information going down the Internet. If someone violates a law, those laws are on the books. Well, that's basically what Commissioner Pai and others are saying. We're going to find out Wayne Madsen's view on this and then take calls on this subject and others. Wayne Madsen, what is your take with WayneMadsenReport.com? What is your take on what's happening right now?
Well, I wish we could freeze the current status quo without any sort of... my fear is that there's been a lot of lobbyists involved with crafting these FCC regulations. I think there's arguments on both sides of this. Here, and I was involved in this peripherally when I was with the Electronic Privacy Information Center years ago. That the issue of net neutrality came up.
And isn't that the group that turned into EFF?
No, well, they actually work together. They're two separate groups. Some of the Epic people went over to EFF, so there's been some cross-pollination there. But they all basically agree that there ought to be net neutrality. Where I don't know their current take on this. I assume
EFF is now coming out saying they don't like the current plan because. Okay. Go ahead.
I'm probably in agreement with their stance. Here's the problem. The problem is that currently, without any sort of, because it's out there, the internet is out there to be preyed upon by the Comcasts of the world, and we know what their intention is. They want to create these multi-tiered systems of bandwidth, access, throughput, and if we have that situation, small websites like the one I run and others out there are going to be relegated down with the slow throughput. The Comcast, the Hollywood studios are going to get the high bandwidth throughput, and so good content, or at least independent content on the internet, will be smothered.
Sure, that's the internet too, and so at one level globally they're trying to do that, and then have a censored, controlled, multi-tier system. Then the FCC comes in as, quote, the savior, but then that will give them regulatory power so they can then, quote, compromise and bring in the Comcast plan.
And here's and that's the problem, because if you get the FCC involved in regulating content, this is a slippery slope, because we know the FCC regulates content on the broadcast networks, so on the radio frequency spectrum, on television and radio. That's why, you can't say those 7 words that George Carlin talked about. Personally, I don't care. If you don't like what you hear on the radio or television, turn it off or turn to another station. But I'm really afraid that this could be opening the door for other lobbyists who represent, let's face it, I'm going to be right out in front on this one, those thin-skinned bellyachers from the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Anti-Defamation League, who will start crying about content, and they may try to use the FCC to regulate content on the internet, and that's where I think this could wind up, because I think, like I say, I wish we could just freeze the current status quo without any sort of lobbyist involvement or major companies like Comcast and Verizon getting involved. But that obviously isn't the case, because we have this, multi-100-page document that's been prepared that's going to, the devils are going to be in the detail on this one, Alex, too.
Well, isn't it telltale that he won't testify before Congress, the FCC chairman, and the 322 pages is secret. I mean, right there, you shouldn't be able to pass something that's secret.
Yeah, and the guy who's the FCC chairman, of course, Obama picked him. He's a former communications industry lobbyist. I mean, he comes right out of the Comcast world, so I wouldn't trust anything on his silver platter, whatever he's offering up. Like I say, I think what you said, it's not broke right now. Why try to fix it? And I wish we could just freeze the current status quo, but that's obviously not going on in D.C. right now.
Let me ask you this question. More and more on every front, the globalist interests are accelerating their program to a reckless level. A, do you agree with that statement? And B, why do you think every globalist project is being put into overdrive right now?
Oh, well, look, the globalists are afraid right now. Look what's happening in Europe with Greece. I mean, the Greeks, unfortunately, buckled. They had this new government. They said, look, we're not going to play around with these bankers and this austerity. But it looks like they, in the 11th hour, they cut this deal. But these are like the little Dutch boy trying to keep his finger plugged in the dam because there's leaks springing up all over the world. And they're getting, frankly, very, very nervous about what's going on.
Elaborate on the Greece-German situation.
Well, what we had in a victory of Syriza, that's the far-left party in Greece, it was an anti-austerity vote. Greece has been told to sell off all their public sector assets, everything from the ports, which they were forced to sell to the Chinese, to airports, to ferry systems, you name it, hospitals, everything was on the chopping block. They wanted to do to Greece what's going on in Ukraine right now, selling public assets for like pennies to the dollar. And the only people that were making out were these, globalist bankers in Frankfurt, the European Central Bank, the EU, and the IMF, what they call in Greece the Troika, the IMF, the European Union, and the European Central Bank. And there have been people on pensions in Greece have been thrown off their pensions. They don't have money to get their prescriptions. I mean, it's been devastating. So the Greek people elected an anti-austerity government. But what did they do at the 11th hour? Instead of just saying, to heck with the EU, we're pulling out, we're going to reestablish the drachma, our old currency, as our monetary unit. They cut this terrible deal, which means that Greece will continue with this austerity program. Who's next? Well, in Spain, Italy, Ireland, Belgium, France, all facing this too. Either in France, you've got the rise of the National Front, the right-wing party, which is supposedly against these EU austerity programs. In Spain, it's Podemos, which is, again, like the Greek leftist party. But in other words, in various countries around Europe and, in fact, around the world, you're seeing the population going to either the left or to the right because they're sick and tired of this status quo that's been engineered by these globalists.
What they're going to is nationalist anti-austerity parties. And when you analyze the Greek debt and others, as you've done, and I've had economists on, 90%, whether it's Iceland, whether it's Greece, whether it's Ireland, whether it's Spain, whether it's Portugal, 90 to 93% of the debt, it's always the same globalist formulae, is a fraudulent derivatives, credit default swap, or other derivative trash counterfeit that Goldman Sachs, in almost every case, operatives have had the president or prime minister sign the people on to, quote, bail out the banks, but then it's their debt to the very bankers they just bailed out, and so their pension funds get raided, or they've got to bail in and give money to the banks. I mean, this screw job is so epic it makes my head spin. When we come back, Wayne, I want to talk about that with you. I want to go to phone calls. I want to ask you the wild card question. What big stories are you working on right now? And so much more. TheWayneMadsenReport.com. He's almost right now. And we're going to tweet that out at Real Alex Jones at Infowars.com. Stay with us, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Alex Jones. The Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution is a Straussian economic system that is deployed as almost a fix-all for the global social engineers, in my view. And it's very transparent. There's a plan to create a two-tier, censored, controlled, hyper-fast internet. It's already in place in South Korea and other areas. Have people opt in, waive their rights, and be surveilled, and then basically have a subweb that is falling apart, choked with different tolls, and regulated as well. And so they have the Comcast and others come in and try to push this hijacking, creating dams in the middle of the internet. Then Congress comes in to, quote, save us, but they don't. They let the FCC, an agency, come in and just say, don't worry, we're going to declare regulatory power over this without Congress even passing a law. So it's a constitutional crisis in that it's the FCC declaring they're just going to do this. And then we talk about FCC appeals when they don't have this regulatory power. And we've got the former head lawyer joining us Monday for the FCC, Bruce Fine. He's the guy that got rid of net neutrality in 1987. So we can defeat this. But, Wayne, what does it signify in the world right now? I know I brought up another subject as we went to break, but I want to go back into this for a moment in this short segment. What does it signify, though, that they're trying this? And if the globalists are in such crisis, looking into your crystal ball, talking to other experts, where do you see the world going? What are we about to see the next few years?
Well, I mean, if you were to sneak in to say the Bilderberg, you actually are inside listening to these people, these elitists, or the Davos World Economic Forum, or any number of these. I dare say that's been discussed at the Bohemian Grove between naked romps in the forest. They're probably saying, "What are we going to do about this internet?" Because it's this fairly independent means of communications where the nation state, as a matter of fact, just last week, three fossils, Henry Kissinger, Zbigniew Brzezinski, and Brent Scowcroft, were testifying before John McCain. And John McCain is very much in bed with these Comcasts of the world on the internet. And all three of these ancient fossils said they're concerned about the Westphalian system being threatened by social media. And what are they talking about? Talking about the internet. And what they're talking about with the Treaty of Westphalia, this was concluded in 1648. This gives you some idea of these people are living in the past. They want to return to feudalism. They want to return to chattel systems, and they're concerned. So when they're talking about the Treaty of Westphalia from 1648, their feeling is that the nation state is being threatened. And right now, we don't really have, in Europe, for example, we don't have a nation state. We got a supranational group called the European Union, which consists of a lot of nation states. And I think basically what they're afraid of is that the EU is going to fall apart. All this Western Hemisphere, NAFTA and CAFTA and the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Transatlantic Trade Partnership, all this stuff is going to come to a screeching halt because the people are going to say, no, that's our jobs. That's our way of life. That's our standard of living. That's our cultural identity, too. That's what Russia's upset about, where they're trying to force feed Russia to adopt standards.
They're trying to force them to take political correctness, open borders, and Russia just isn't buying it and expanding on that. You're absolutely right. For those that don't know, it was about 9 years ago. We're going to try to find the article. We'll have to find the exact headline to find it when it's that old. But remember, he came out lobbying for Comcast and said, we need a law with no proof, basically, was the law they wanted, that Comcast and the recording industries were proposing to, quote, blow up pirates' computers. That if they claim you've downloaded something illegally, then they send a virus that fries your computer. Remember that? He said, quote, blow up your computer.
Yeah. I mean, these people are insane. But the mere fact that you had Scowcroft, Kissinger, and Brzezinski testifying before some...
shows they're scared.
Yeah, I mean, they have to haul these people out of the crypt to complain about how the Westphalian treaty system is being threatened by social media. You know, they're talking about you, they're talking about me, they're talking about everyone else out there who's got an independent voice.
Well, Hillary said it 4 years ago. They're losing the info war. We'll be right back with Wayne Madsen, your phone calls, and a lot more. And wild cards. What does he think's most important? I'll ask him. One of the commissioners is calling the FCC power grab of the internet lawless. That's what it is. Lawless. The debate isn't whether they say they're going to do a good job or not. You don't want the federal government involved in the internet when it's an out-of-control agency like the FCC historically. A draconian operation. And what they want to pass in their committee, not even Congress, but the FCC, that they say has passed, they're going to announce tomorrow, is 322 pages and is secret. Written by special interests, you can bet your right arm. And Commissioner Pai says net neutrality is a solution that won't work to a problem that doesn't exist. That's right. It's a power grab to then. Yeah, the current proposal that comes out will have some bad stuff in it, but it's just the fact that they're asserting that they have the jurisdiction when the same corporations need government as a cover to put this into law. They've tried to act unilaterally to end net neutrality. Comcast, Time Warner, and others, they've been unable. So now they want the government to do it in the name of saving it. Just like they stage the terror attacks or provocatorum or allow them to happen to then take over. I mean, it's real simple.